In today's world, it has never been easier to access any topic you may be curious about. 4.7 billion internet users can get a solid foundation for their education through resources like Wikipedia, Khan Academy, and even YouTube. But there's a major barrier stopping them from making their own original contributions to science, a barrier that even the largest, most established institutions are going up against. The paywall. A majority of the world's research, which is mostly conducted with public funding, is kept behind paywalls run by a tiny number of publishing companies. But that brings us to the question we're going to explore today. What if it doesn't have to be this way?
Allison, can you explain what internet is?
This video is inspired by the article Crypto SciHub and the Decentralization of Science, which can be found on the website 1729.com. It's a newsletter that pays you in crypto to learn new skills through tasks and tutorials. I highly recommend you all check it out, and I'll leave a link below to the 1729 website, Twitter, and the article below. We begin by exploring a little bit of the history of scientific literature. For the majority of the last 2 decades, open access journals like the Public Library of Science, preprint servers like archive, and public initiatives like those by the NIH have been making significant but incomplete progress when it comes to original empirical and theoretical publications for science. This is mostly because they're still working within the legacy system. Recently, new sites like SciHub and LibGen have achieved faster and more complete results by making every academic paper in the world free of charge to anyone at any time in any country. This includes poor people in poor places who don't have access to expensive journal subscriptions. 1729 states that this is the crypto model, which is working outside of the legacy system. I know what you're thinking if you're familiar with these websites, or if you do a quick Google search, or if you just use some common sense. Working outside the system isn't the most legal thing in some countries.
Is that legal?
The exact gray area depends on whether you're uploading, downloading, viewing in browser, or linking. Now, I'm not going to link these websites exactly, but I will say if you add the word Reddit to any question you Google, there's a good chance you'll find whatever it is you're looking for. SciHub is incredibly popular with practicing scientists all over the world. It's even preferred by people with subscriptions to these other journals because the alternative is a fast and a universal search. Moxie Marlinspike, the founder of the privacy-based messaging app Signal, was recently covered by The New Yorker. He often cites the legalization of same-sex marriage, and in some states, marijuana, as evidence that people sometimes need to challenge laws or engage in nominally criminal activity for years before progress can be made. Before, it was inconceivable, he said. After, it was inconceivable that it was ever inconceivable. Privacy, he says, is a necessary condition for experimentation and for social change. As you can imagine, this isn't popular at all with commercial publishers. A lot of them have tried to block access to SciHub at the ISP level in places like Sweden, France, India, and multiple other countries. In a way, SciHub is like the ultimate cool kid. Really popular with academic researchers and really unpopular with commercial publishers. This isn't all that different from other piracy and file sharing conflicts that the early internet was known for. Sites like Napster and Kazaa would be sued by the RIAA, but they were wildly popular with the listeners as much as the record labels hated them. The result of that conflict was the rise of A, takedown-proof BitTorrent, and B, commercially legitimated services like iTunes and Spotify, all of which are still popular today, even BitTorrent. Ask any kid growing up in the 2000s about LimeWire or FrostWire, and you'll probably see the nostalgia just flash in their eyes. But if the concepts behind Bitcoin had been feasible earlier, if BitTorrent was integrated with a digital asset, the world might look different. We ask ourselves, how might the SciHub LibGen dispute be resolved today now that cryptocurrencies exist? To answer and think about this, we first need to look at academic paywalls. The business of academic publishing is very interesting. Analysts estimate that journal profit margins range from 20% to 40%, depending on whether the publisher is a society, university, or commercial. You may ask then, what does the scientific community receive in exchange? The 2015 STM report lays out the 4 primary benefits of the academic journal model on page 6. Journals form a core part of the process of scholarly communication and are an integral part of scientific research itself. 1. Journals do not just disseminate information, they also, 2, provide a mechanism for the registration of the author's precedence. 3. Maintain quality through peer review and provide a fixed archival version for future reference. 4. They also provide an important way for scientists to navigate the ever-increasing volume of published material. Does it make sense then to keep the most high-quality scientific papers in closed repositories? Let's look at all 4 points more closely. Number 1, dissemination of research. It usually costs thousands of dollars for researchers to publish journals. That publication cost alone keeps some of the most important work from getting out there. Authors in paywall publications are only allowed to share the paper's abstract, not the full paper. To read the entire paper, their colleagues either have to have access to a subscription or pay a per article fee. One large scientific publisher, Springer Nature, has online-only prices that run from $40 a year to over $25,000 a year, and average about $2,020 a year in 2021. 1729 reviewed the cost of individual journals and found that most tend to be between $35 to over $100. If you need to read multiple articles per week or even per day, you're going to find a way around those rates, usually by relying on mainstream media outlets or other substitutes. The process of sharing and discussing research papers online is even too complex for these insiders, to the point where they don't even do it. Number 2. Registration of precedence. The scientific paywall does not make it difficult to determine who published a novel idea or result first, but it does make it more expensive to look for someone's prior work in art so you don't repeat someone else's work by accident. It also takes a lot of money to perform a function that's fairly easy to do on the blockchain. Number 3. Providing a fixed archival version for future reference. Here's something crazy I didn't know before reading this article. When privately owned journals go under, their archives can just vanish from the internet. This has already happened to dozens of important journals, with all the published work in them being lost. Now, only a few researchers can still access old hard copies. Some people might argue that the most important journals in most subfields still have print runs, so a lot of their past work is still in libraries. But given the fact that these costly print runs have to be paid for by researcher submission fees and hefty reader subscriptions, again, printed journal subscriptions run from over $170 a year to over $20,000 a year. The decision to print versus publish digitally in the public domain is still a major net negative for long-term archival success. Number 4. Certification of quality. The main claim of journal publishers is that they are the safeguards of quality. However, in the early 2010s, psychology started to experience a replication crisis, meaning the methods used for many scientific studies are difficult or impossible to replicate or reproduce. This problem is now being found in other scientific areas as well, which shows publishers aren't adding nearly as much value in this area as they claim. Studies from the past decade show that well over half of the surveyed papers in various disciplines failed to replicate. For context, one study could only replicate 39 out of 100 results, another 14 of 28, and another 13 of 21. The replication crisis has many causes well understood by the community and by people a lot more involved than I am. But one obvious contributing factor is studies can't be replicated if scientists can't access them. Also, it may be too costly or complex to find out if a study is high quality enough to be worth replicating. So not only are journal publishers failing at certification in their editorial processes, but by putting paywalled roadblocks to scientific scrutiny, they're making the replication crisis worse. So what would a crypto SciHub look like? One possible solution that people have discussed is to have a streaming publisher similar to Spotify, which offers a catalog of all papers for a flat fee. What 1729 thinks is a better, more radical approach is to make a version of SciHub that is completely crypto-based. It could even be a way to financially incentivize legacy publishers to give open access to their entire archive. There are existing tools we could use that would also help. Decentralized media, so platforms like Mirror or BitClout. Peer-to-peer storage, like Filecoin or SIA. Blockchain DNS and crypto domains, using sites like ENS, HNS, Unstoppable Domains, crypto research sites like ResearchHub, EthResearch, or VitaDAO, reproducible research tools like DistillPub and Python notebooks, academic search engines like Archive Sanity or COVID-19 Primer, and, of course, SciHub and LibGen. All these innovations could be translated into a model for decentralized science, and maybe a crypto version of SciHub. For example, data, inter-researcher, inter-project, and inter-paper relationships, like references, can be made available on a blockchain that is locked open. This means there wouldn't be a single entity or for-profit corporation to administer them. Open and publicly accessible research graphs can also have their own network-native crypto incentives. This might create new funding models for curation and shift the world of scientific research from a US government-centered, dollar-funded, institutional model to a decentralized network of international researchers funded by a cryptocurrency. In its simplest terms, it could be a lot more like what science used to be.
Tapping into internet, a scientist can share knowledge with another scientist at lightning speed.
A big thanks again to Balaji Srinivasan and his incredible newsletter 1729. They have some of the most thought-provoking articles on the internet, and I highly encourage you all to check it out. If you could take 2 seconds to like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Also, feel free to share this with a friend or someone who you think would be interested in the subject as well. I know I'm personally no expert in science, but I try to learn a little bit more every day, and I'd love for you to join me on this journey of learning together in public. Any advice on what you'd like to see more of going forward, you can leave in the comments below. Thank you for taking the time to watch this all the way through. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.